I could not have been better prepared than working alongside my comrades in the union movement. I believe what I appreciate the most about the union movement is that when we sit around the grog bowl, everybody is equal. There are no ranks, no titles, no hierarchies, no chiefs, no commoners. We are all one and the same. And that's where I began my political career. And that's why what I continue to advocate in politics, that there is a place for titles, there is a place for hierarchies, but when we are in politics, we must be heard equally. And that includes the union movement and our workers. We must be able to be heard at the table. The women convened a Women Invigorating the Nation Convention, or the WIN Convention, which I opened. And one of the phrases that came out of there that I really appreciated was where I was reminded, it's one thing to get to the table, and it's quite another thing, what do you do when you get to the table? When you are seated at the table, what do you do? And that is always a challenge for me. On that note, I wish to welcome you all. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's certainly a privilege, and I wish to formally acknowledge our members here in the room, to the National President for FTUC, my brother Daniel Urai, National Secretary, FTUC, my brother and leader, who I still call boss to today when he calls. It's always Bula boss. I got used to that in my years starting off in my political career. Felix Anthony. To the National Executive Board of FTUC, Brother Ragwan, senior member of the union movement. From the Pacific Islands Council of Trade Unions, Miss Carol from International Trade Union Confederation. My sister Lati from Australian Workers Union. Wow, what a powerful woman leader. Australian Council of Trade Unions, Brother Nikhil and Sister Caroline from the New Zealand Council of Trade Unions. Delegates, FTUC leaders, youth and women. Bula Vinaka. Welcome to Fiji, and thank you for bringing the beautiful weather. I believe we have 8 countries represented here today, so when I mention you, just indicate to me where you're sitting in the room. From New Zealand? Raise your hand. Kia ora. Welcome. From Australia? Good day, Nikhil. And from Kiribati? Yeah. Howdy, you're welcome. Cook Islands? John is here from Cook Islands? Torana, welcome. From Samoa? Alofa, talofa lava, welcome. And Tuvalu? Talofa, welcome. Bula. Vanuatu. Hello, my sister. Welcome. And of course, Solomon Islands. Sagalageta, welcome. Tonga is here as well? Senior, another senior member. Welcome. Look, and like I mentioned, I want to start off by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the land that we sit upon, the Vanua Sonaka, Wanataukenaua. Most ministers, when we are invited to a union symposium, we are warned by officials to keep things general. Yeah, don't ruffle any feathers. What are they talking about? Even when I walked here today, Felix and them were standing outside looking at me. I said, I know, this is the only space where I come to where I don't have an entourage. And that's on purpose, because I know I'm coming to a space where we are equal and we are able to just be together as brothers and sisters in solidarity. We are told to stay in our lane, don't promise anything that has not been cleared. Well, I think I'm going to disappoint my officials this morning. I look around the room, I see, like I mentioned, I see Felix. He's been the National Secretary since 1999. That's a long time, 27 years, Felix. In that time, our country has had 4 prime ministers, 2 coups. Very vivid moments, isn't it, Felix? And maybe more ministers than any of us care to count. of whom I'm only the latest. But Felix is still here. Daniel Urai, been president since 95 for a long time, 31 years. There is something instructive in that. Governments come and go, but workers stay. And the people who organize workers, and I know this firsthand, are often the steadiest hands in the country. I don't stand before you today as a stranger to your work, as mentioned by Jyoti, Sister Jyoti, where my political engagement with the FASA workers in 2017, it was really an opportunity that was God-given. In the space of unions, when you see a need, you feel a need. Yeah, we don't think, just act. And I don't wish to make any excuses for the union here in Fiji to our comrades from the Pacific about perhaps there could be more engagement of women and youth. But like I mentioned, when you see a need, you feel a need. That's how unionists move. They act. You act. And when you do so, perhaps at times, the structural stuff, the procedural stuff, we need support in that to ensure that we are keeping up with the majority of our workers and people in the country, and that is our women and youth. And how do we ensure that? And so today, when I saw the program and I saw the theme, I was so encouraged. I was like, I think in the past 16 years before 2022, we were just fighting. The union movement was just fighting to stay alive. Let alone thinking about what structurally may need to change to open up the space for women and youth. And so, though you are here from your countries to learn from Fiji, Fiji still has a long way to go in that space. And so in the last 3 years, and then up till today, I'm very, very grateful for the effort that the union movement is now putting in to ensure that we have more women and youth representation. Felix may not know this, but I have heard from quarters that, how come Felix is still there? How come Dan is still there? I think I can speak for them. They want to be replaced, no? Yes, they do. You all want to be replaced, including, maybe we can call them seniors now? Not yet? They do. We all want to be replaced. And it's the same for me as a woman leader, with only 5 women in parliament out of 55 members. Must congratulate New Air for now having almost 20% membership in parliament in just their elections last week. What an achievement. But it is structural. It is structural, and it takes male champions for gender equality, male champions for youth equality to make this happen. That's what Felix and the union movement did for me. That I regard our unionists as male champions for equality. That's my personal experience, and I stand by it, and I continue to be grateful for that in where I am. Though I'm reminiscing, I'm not really here to reminisce, because the world of work that we knew is changing faster than our laws, our institutions, and frankly, our imaginations. So let me put this plainly, and I'm sure this resonates with you. Dignity at work used to mean a fair wage and a safe floor under your feet. That is still true. It'll always be true. But in 2026, dignity at work also means three things that we did not have to fight about a generation ago. It means a fair algorithm. It means a safe planet. And it means a passport that does not strip you of your rights when you cross a border. And I will go through those. I want to talk to each of you about these things and what government and unions must do together for our workers. First, the algorithm. You step onto any BPO floor in Suva today, so the call centers, business processing businesses. The shift roster is set by software. Performance is scored by software. The voice on the other end of a customer call is recorded, transcribed, and rated by the software. In some workplaces, AI now decides who gets the next shift, who gets promoted, and who gets quietly managed out. This isn't science fiction. It's happening on Fijian soil right now. And here's the question the unions must put on every bargaining table in this country. When an algorithm makes a decision about a worker, who can the worker appeal to? Who explains it? And who is accountable for it? Right now, in most workplaces in the world, the answer is no one. The algorithm is treated as a force of nature, but that cannot stand. The same digital tools that manage workers also follows workers home. Online abuse has become the new picket line where women workers in particular are pushed back from public life. I have seen it directed at women in this country. I have personally experienced it, who dare to lead. The comments on my appearance, on what I wear, on how my hair is done, the color of my lipstick, the shoes I'm wearing, anything but what I'm saying. The threats against a woman activist's children, the ridicule of a woman unionist's voice, online harassment of a worker because of her work is workplace harassment, even if it's not happening physically in the workplace. That is worker harassment. It does not become acceptable because it happens on a phone after hours. And this is why we have the Online Safety Act for a reason, and I hope that each of our comrades that are here from other countries will push in your own country for an Online Safety Act, especially worker online safety, to ensure that that is in the laws as well and covered. The laws alone, though, cannot protect women. Unions will. Stronger voice to call out online harassment of workers when it is to do with their work. Because unions, you are still the only institution in our countries that can walk into a workplace and say, this stops here. There is a bigger conversation coming, and I want this room to be ready for it. Artificial intelligence is not a future problem. It is a present one. Within the next 5 years, parts of work that Fijians do today in customer service, in administration, in accounting, in translation, in transcription, will be done by machines. That is a fact. The question is not whether it happens, the question is who pays for the transition. Will the productivity gains go to capital while displaced workers go home with no safety net at all? Will retraining be a worker's private problem, paid out of a redundancy package that runs out in 6 months? Or will Fiji and the Pacific be a region where the gains of automation are shared, where retraining is funded, and where unions are at the table when these decisions are made? I know which Fiji this government wants to build. I know which Fiji I want to build. I also know that governments need to be pushed. We need to be pushed. And that's what you do. You need to push us. You need to push your governments to be prepared. Second, the planet. I'm the minister responsible for climate change, but I won't stand here and recite our policies to you. There are too many. Even I'm still trying to get all of them. I've only been 4 months into the job. But you can read them, but what I will tell you is that what climate change is doing to your members. In the cane belt, at least here in Fiji, in the sugar cane belt, workers finish shifts in heat that drains the water from their bodies. In our hotel laundries, the rooms run hotter than the day outside. On our construction sites, work continues through rain because for too many workers, no work means no pay. The climate crisis is not a future inconvenience for these workers. It is already shrinking wages, shortening lives, and stealing their rest. So when we talk about a just transition in Fiji, you hear this just transition in the climate space. This is what it means in practical terms. It must mean enforceable heat stress standards, not advisory ones. If a workplace exceeds a defined temperature, the work must stop. And workers are paid, not sent home without pay. It means wage protection clauses in collective agreements that anticipate climate disruption. Not pretend a flood is a one-off. It's no longer a one-off in our countries. We're flooding every other week. So what happens when the office closes and there's no production? Workers don't get paid. When a worker doesn't get their job done because the road is underwater, the loss should not be hers or his alone. It must mean that the new green economy of electric vehicle maintenance, so EVs are now coming into Fiji. We have a secured provider for EV vehicles in Fiji. That's FMF. Note, FMF. Lots of workers. When you're looking at electrical vehicle maintenance, you're looking at solar installation, climate smart agriculture, sustainable tourism. These are built on union jobs, union wages, and union training pipelines, not with imported labor on substandard contracts. So it must mean that Fiji's voice at the global climate table is not just a delegation of officials alone. It is a delegation that includes workers, because the people who live with the transition must help design it. And this is the discussion that I am having with FTUC, with our officials, about how you can participate leading up to pre-COP later this year and also at COP31, because the workers' voice must be heard. A livable wage and a livable planet, in my opinion, are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. And I'll say this in every room I'm invited into, as long as I'm in this ministerial position. Third, the border. Right now, while we sit in this room, Pacific women and men are picking fruit in Tasmania. They're pruning vines in Marlborough. Our Fijian nurses are working night shifts in Brisbane. The PALM scheme, the RSE scheme, our nursing and care workers pipelines, these are sending the labor, the love, and family time of Pacific workers across our oceans. And I will say what every Pacific minister should say in this room. We're grateful for the remittances, but we are not grateful for the conditions that some of our workers face. A Fijian palm worker or a Pacific worker who is bullied by a foreman in regional Australia is still a worker. I visited with workers, neck workers, in Mount Gambier, which is just near Adelaide by the sea, last year for Fiji Day. There were a number of issues that were raised. And I had to separate them because we had the employers in the room as well, and they were having the meeting with me. So the employers were there and the workers were there, there were representatives, and the employers were speaking the whole time, of course, as it always is the case. And I got the opportunity to just meet with them separately, and the issues were raised. So the MP from South Australia was present as well, and I had a meeting with him directly and told him about what was going on. And he promised me that he would look out for the workers and what they were going through. A Fijian nurse whose visa is held over her head by a private aged care provider is still a Fijian worker or a Pacific worker. A Pacific seafarer whose contract is rewritten in a port he has never seen is still a Pacific worker. Their rights do not stop at our exclusive economic zones. This government supports the right of our workers abroad to join unions in their host countries. This is without exception, and it must be done. When the Minister Pat Conroy was here yesterday or the day before, he announced that the Pacific workers are to be treated the same as Australian workers. And that includes all their rights must be recognized as well. So that's a milestone from the Australian government, but it must be put into practice, must be followed up. I extend my deep thanks to ACTU, to NZCTU, to the Pacific Islands Council of Trade Unions, and to the ITUC for the work you already do for our people on your soil. You are our compatriots in this. But let me speak the other direction too. We have workers from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Indonesia, who are working in Fiji today. They came here for the same reason our people have gone to New Zealand, gone to Australia, to work, to build, and to send something home. They are entitled to the same protection under Fijian law as a Fijian worker. The same minimum standards, the same access to grievance procedures, the same right to be in a union. Anything less makes us hypocrites at the international tables, where we ask for protection of our own. A word to the women in this room. The Fiji's labor movement was not built by men alone. It was built in the kitchens, the laundries, the wards, the classrooms, the call centers, and the markets where Fijian women have worked for generations, often without contracts, often without protection, often without pay that reflects their labor. Too often, when women rise in leadership, we face a second job that no man in the same role had to do. The job of defending ourselves against ridicule about anything except for what we say. We have to defend our bodies, our voices, our families, our faith. And I have been in politics long enough to know exactly what that costs. But to the women in this room, your union sisters, your women members, your women delegates, do not let them make you small. Your countries need you bigger. Stand for office. Run your unions. Take your seat at every table where decisions are made about your lives. And of course, to our young people, to the youth that are here as well. You are most important because we're doing all of this for you. So you have a better Fiji, a better Pacific when you get your turn, which I hope comes sooner than later. Some of us have joined in when the hair is white and we're supposed to be retiring, right, Brother Ragwan, and we get called back in. It shouldn't be a retirement job being in politics. I've been in here long enough to know you need energy to be in politics. So we young people need to be in politics. And you can learn along the way. Don't feel intimidated by those ahead of you just because they're senior, just because they're senior. I won't say the word. But yes, be encouraged. Be encouraged. Because like for myself, when I was very blessed to come into the union movement and be nurtured and be led and be mentored by those before me, that was it. That was the leaping pad for me. And it's been 12 years since PDP, People's Democratic Party. It's been 12 years. I feel old now in politics. I feel senior. It doesn't resonate though when someone says, you're a senior member in a government. I don't really feel that way. I feel like every day is a new day with new issues. You wake up and you feel ready to go again, right? The mind is young. The mind is youthful. But I mean that very sincerely, that I keep coming back to this space whenever I face challenges as a woman leader. I remember the times when I was able to sit at a table and sit around the grog bowl and sit at the drains by the airport and sit wherever we were and feel like I was just one of you. I won't say one of the boys, because I remind women, don't try to be like the men. Just be a woman, yes. We bring something different. We bring something different perspective, but together, equally in leadership, equally in thought processes, equally in policy making, equally in what the living wage should be. We must make these decisions equally, because just like a family, we need mother and father. For children to feel that they can have that kind of leadership in their homes. It's the same for national leadership. It's the same for union leadership. So I hope our young people, please, don't feel disempowered or disillusioned by the seniors in the room or in national leadership. Step up. Find that space. The union space is a great space to do it, to really learn what politics is about. Tomorrow, you will launch the first ever call for a national living wage for Fiji. I see the red lights going on now. I better not say anything more. That's all right. I'm here for the red lights, like I said. Yes. But I want this room to know that I heard that announcement before I came here. I've thought about it carefully, and I will say to you what I will say in cabinet. This must happen. Whatever the call is tomorrow, Felix, please know I will fully support it. It is high time. And it takes political will. I know that. And yes, there's no more to say but to say that it is overdue and it is high time. We can skirt around the issue. We can talk about other subsidies. We can talk about tax breaks to employers. Anything but the worker. But it cannot be avoided. It must be done. And with the way the union movement has moved in this country to advocate for minimum wage, and it has happened, keep doing it. Keep doing it. So I support the call for tomorrow. I know I won't lose my job over this, because there is a majority of cabinet that feels the same way. And I will get to them. Before I sit down, there is a truth our elders passed down to us in many forms and many languages across every culture in this room. Work is dignity. And I often hear that from Felix and Dan, the leaders. Work is dignity. It is where we spend the most amount of time. It is what defines us. And it is where our dignity is defined. But work can also degrade us, can have the opposite effect for the same reasons. There is no third option. So the work of all of you here in this room, the work of FTUC, of every union represented here, and every leader who has ever stood at a workplace gate at 5 in the morning with a thermos and a clipboard to make sure that the work of the Pacific worker dignifies them, the cane cutter that goes home to a meal that he or she helped to grow. You've got the hotel cleaner that takes the children to school without choosing between bus fare and breakfast. A young woman in a call center who's being bullied by an algorithm or by a stranger online. This is not a small task, but it is a task for our generation. And it cannot be done by government alone, or by unions alone, or by employers alone. We need to be there for our workers. And I thank you. I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work you do. I have the greatest respect for unionists. I thank the FTUC for continuing to push for the changes in the Political Parties Act, the participation of union workers and union officials. You should not have to choose. In fact, it makes you more effective. Makes any union official more effective when they come into politics and continue to represent that space, right? Keep doing that. I wish the event tomorrow the very best, and I apologize for not being here. Yes, I have to wear my rugby hat and go to Kandahar tonight, to my island province, because they're having the players are all playing right now in order to be chosen for a spot to the Skipper Cup. So I need to be there tomorrow to officiate and to close it up. But I just want to say again, and as I close, God bless each of you. God bless each of you and your families and all the work that you do. You are the heartbeat of this nation, and our workers look up to you. And I thank you very much again. God bless you, and God bless our Pacific.